Hello and welcome to the 7th entry of my film journal, where I record my experience watching your favorite movie. I'm Frankie, and today I live hopefully ever after with Sweet Charity. Released in 1969, Sweet Charity is the directorial debut of choreographer and stage director Bob Fosse. He had previously directed and choreographed the stage musical of the same name, and the story itself was based on the 1957 Fellini film Nights of Cabiria.
And before they saw the movie, when the word was just around California, I had hundreds of offers to make movies, hundreds, 4. But after it opened, it was pretty cold. No one really wanted me for a long time.
Even though the movie was pretty much a flop in the box office, it still got nominated for Best Score, Best Art Direction, and Best Costume Design at the Academy Awards. And because these aspects are actually what I want to focus on along with the choreography, then let's just go through the plot really quick so we understand the setting of what we are watching. And if you only want to hear my rant on choreography staging, then skip to this timestamp over here. Just over there. Am I gonna be very, very annoying about this movie? Possibly. Probably. Most likely. Sweet Charity focuses on the adventures of a girl who wanted to be loved. On the busy streets of New York, Charity Hope Valentine whimsically makes her way to a date in Central Park while stopping by shops and the bank in order to take out her life savings. I have a feeling that I'm gonna be talking shit about La La Land in this episode, and it's not gonna go down well. She meets Charlie, this obviously very charismatic dipshit, and they spend the day in the park before Charlie pushes Charity off a bridge and steals all her money. I love it when in musicals they have characters who don't speak. It's like, this guy's not gonna be important for the plot. He doesn't need to say anything. Don't trust him. Charity can't swim, and some bystanders fish her out of the water. Police usher away the crowd that gathered to watch the commotion and take her statement about the incident. A distraught Charity explains that she is a dance hall hostess and that Charlie, whom she will marry once he leaves his wife, must have tried to save her and accidentally only caught her handbag before leaving. Her colleagues understand the situation for what it is and point out the truth to her while they get ready for work. Charity, however, is an adamant optimist and hopes that Charlie will call her any minute. Girls with such good imaginations need to start writing romance books or something. Working at a dance hall is no easy job, and the women take their places in full glam in order to entice the men who come in for a dance or a conversation. The place is sleazy, and the women probably overworked, but hey, they'll show you a good time anyhow for a couple of bucks. Charity asks Herman, the owner, if anyone's been asking for her, but obviously Charlie's not coming back, so Charity's feeling down on herself for being such a people pleaser and spending so much of her hard-earned money on such a jerk. On a rainy night, Charity meets Vittorio Vitali, an Italian movie star, on the street just as he is having an argument with his girlfriend Ursula. In a rage, Ursula takes off in a taxi and Vittorio invites a doe-eyed Charity to go with him to a club. See, he took off his sunglasses, so it's an important character. Not like Charlie. We'll never see that guy again. In the car, Vittorio explains that his girlfriend gets jealous and drives him crazy with her childishness. Charity is like, she's so hot though if you go for that sort of thing, and realizes she probably dug her own grave in that moment when Vittorio agrees. They arrive at the club, which is a very specific scene, and Charity obviously does not belong there, and everyone knows it. She sits down with Vittorio and checks out the menu, which is way too big, and everyone dances. If you haven't seen the scene itself, then it's very likely that you probably know it from being referenced in a bunch of different things. Vittorio receives a call from Ursula, and Charity advises him to be aloof, so he hangs up. They join the dance, and Charity immediately steps on his toe, ruining the whole vibe. They head to Vittorio's mansion, and even though she has some qualms about the whole snapping situation, she follows Vittorio to his bedroom. Charity is just such a people pleaser. Poor thing. She tells him that she works as a dance hall hostess, and he asks why she took such a job, and she tells him that it's because of the fickle finger of fate. They toast a funny phrase and discuss Vittorio's movies. Fickle finger of fate. Fickle finger of fate. Forever the romantic, Charity loves a moment from one of his movies where he kisses every finger of his co-star and says, "Without love, life has no purpose." He asks her why she believes in love, and she compares it to having a religion because she practices it so much, sometimes to the detriment of herself, as we have seen before. As they are about to have dinner, Charity bursts into tears as none of her girlfriends won't believe that she is having this experience. Vittorio especially autographs a photograph for her and also gives her a cane and a top hat he wore in one of his movies, which she is extremely happy about.
Poor Charity.
Who was with me tonight? In my apartment. Alone.
Alone?
I swear it.
That sounds exactly like what you would write. Ursula appears and they hide Charity in the closet with a beer and a snack where she'll have to stay for the whole night as Ursula and Vittorio make love in the bedroom. In the morning, Vittorio sneaks Charity out of the house. If only Charity could be such a ride or die for herself and not just other people. Charity recounts the night to her colleagues who have a difficult time believing her, so she shows them seashells to the seashore. So she shows them all the mementos she got from him. The whole story prompts the dancers to reflect on their own situation, and Charity, Nikki, and Helene dream of other ways that they could earn a living. These dreams are short-lived though, as Herman calls the women to get back to work. Charity isn't giving up though, and she heads to an employment agency in order to get another job. Careers limited. You wonder if she'll find out that there are indeed limited careers. Her qualifications are so poor that the agent she is referred to thinks that his colleagues are playing a prank on him. Humiliated, Charity goes along with this idea and excuses herself. The careers were limited. In the lift, she meets an insurance evaluator, Oscar, and when the lift gets stuck, we find out that he is claustrophobic AF.
Help!
This guy has everything under control. Charity does everything to keep him calm in the situation, but this does not go very well, and he passes out from fear. Probably for the best that he fainted, honestly. I think
This is really my lucky day.
I think this is good.
All the millions of guys in this town, I wind up with a candidate for the funny farm.
So what do we think? Do we hate it? Do we love it? Easy way to see who's queer in the comments. While Oscar's passed out, she has time to romanticize him, and once they get out of the elevator, he asks her out. She's not sure about the whole thing, so he asks to meet by the bridge in Central Park, where she was mugged, and despite her doubt, she ends up meeting him there. Oscar takes Charity out for a proper date, and the whole time, she's sitting there trying to figure out how he's going to disappoint her. Miraculously, they end up having a pretty decent date, so Charity doesn't want to tell him what she does for a living in fear of scaring him off. So she lies, and she says she works at a bank. At home, a small flat that she shares with her colleagues, she tells the others about their date, and they realize she hasn't been honest with him. They continue seeing each other, and Oscar takes her on a date to an alternative church that started in a jazz club. You know what? If church was like this, I would maybe also go once. Not more though, just only once. Now, this church is run by Big Daddy and takes place in a huge garage. Those leather pants. under those stage lights. Sammy worked for his paycheck. Turns out someone called the cops on the church and everyone has to flee before they get there, so Oscar and Charity hide in a bunch of old tires. You wanna go join a cult during our date? It'll be fun. Would you join this church? It's all happening there. Oscar realizes that he's gotten over his claustrophobia thanks to the situation and that he likes that Charity depends on him. They climb out of the tires and feel over the moon. They are in fact so happy that they decide to get married. Charity feels guilty that she hasn't told him the truth and threatens to quit her job at the dance hall. She meets Oscar and tells him the truth, but it turns out that he already knows that she works in a dance hall because he followed her one time when she ditched him. He tries to be open-minded and says that he still loves her and that it's not important to him because he sees how his life has gotten better since they met. They plan to get married and move out of the city where they can grow flowers and not think about the past. Charity is elated as she feels her deepest wish of being loved by somebody has come true. They head to the dance hall to grab the last of Charity's stuff, and it turns out that everyone's thrown them a big party to celebrate their marriage. Mr. doesn't like the reality. Oh no. Oh no. Seeing the reality of Charity's life kind of spooks Oscar though, and as they are about to get their marriage license, he backs out of the whole thing, breaking poor Charity's heart.
Okay.
Oscar, no.
Your turn.
No,
Why not,
Oscar.
I didn't care too much for the first half of my life, but the second half.
Well, I guess it's better now than later, right? You don't even need him, Charity. Screw that guy. Charity heads to the bridge from the beginning of the movie and contemplates ending her life, but ends up sleeping next to the bridge instead. This is so sad. Can a girl catch a break? In the morning, a bunch of hippies wake her up and gift her a flower, which again awakens her hope for love and lifts her spirits. She has the love inside herself this entire time. That's right. It turns out that you can be in love with your life, regardless of whether you have a man. See, this entire film wasn't about Charity finding a man after all. It was about her finding herself. It's a happy ending after all. So now we know what happens, but let's look at how it happens. Since I'm gonna be talking a little about dancing, then I think it's important to give context of where I'm coming from with my comments. I am definitely not a professional dancer. My dance background is that in primary school I had to do like 4 years of ballroom dance classes, and then later when I was a teenager I did 6 years of dance classes, the last 3 of which were mainly focusing on Broadway jazz and technical technique, and then I usually would be in the studio like maybe 8 to 10 hours a week or something. I don't know. I don't know how I used to do that, but that's what I used to do. Starting from a young age, I have also been obsessed with certain movie musicals. I remember asking my uncle for the DVD of Chicago for Christmas at the tender age of 11. And I also remember making my dad order the DVD for Singing in the Rain when I was around 13, because back then there just wasn't really much of a market for movies like that locally, so we had to use the internet to receive goods. And I guess I also have a bachelor's in film, so yeah, that's where I'm coming from. I don't know many things, but I have a lot of opinions basically. Essentially, I have been around the block when it comes to dance sequences. And the way that my brain Lights up when I see the musical numbers from Sweet Charity is no joke. Bing. What I personally really love about these group dance sequences, especially, is the way that Fosse is able to bring out different aspects of the story through the combination of choreography, set and costume design, cinematography, and editing.
It was quite a successful Broadway show, and then they asked me to make the movie of it. I had been fairly comfortable with stage techniques, and now I was thrust into an entirely different way of looking at things. However, the more involved I became with film, the more fascinated I became. Good or bad, stage direction has certain conventions, certain restrictions. In film, however, the only limitations that I've discovered are the limitations in the director's head.
Can I have the playback up a little bit, please? Right.
Here we go. Are you ready? I must have seen this scene so many times, and every time you just see something else that you haven't noticed before. Every piece of choreography is there in order to translate something to the viewer. A great example of this is Rich Man's Frog, the dance sequence in the club that Charity visits with Vittorio. From the moment they step into the club, you know exactly that Charity does not belong.
Who is it? Who is it?
Who is it?
It's me.
In fact, she's not even in this dance sequence. Already before the music starts, you get an idea of how much this club almost operates as a unit with different levels of importance for each clubber. There are cliques of its members, and you can see that from their shared costume elements, as well as the posturing and how they move about in the club. As a side note, does anyone know if the scene was inspired by the Fred Astaire dance scene in Bandwagon? Does anyone know? Is that a thing? I didn't find anything about it, but it looks like it was referenced, you know?
Is crawling with celebrities. I'm the only person here I never heard of.
Get your wrist ready. Everyone has a role to play. The men walk around scanning the room while bobbing their heads and exhaling cigarette smoke. The women enter each frame legs first with elaborate wigs that ask, "How many sit-ups do I need to do to be able to defy gravity like that?" Listen, smoking and dancing at the same time? I don't know. I would have been beat. The scene reads to me like a bizarre social and mating ritual of the it crowd, and as the night progresses, they all start to hit heavier and relax at the same time until the group completely merges into synchronized chaos. The roles of each clubber are defined by how they move and who they move with, and who moves first and who copies, mixing choreography with subtle and exaggerated movement, sharp angles and punches, and dynamic stage formations, with quick manual zoom-ins and zoom-outs, with what seems like a pretty slow cut rate in the edit compared to what we are used to nowadays. All this gives the viewer so much to be enticed by when it comes to this performance. Even when playing with pretty clean compositional lines like this one on the red background, where the clear focus falls on the female dancer at the start of the line, Fosse adds elements like the silly goose at the end to, in a way, disrupt the compositional flow and give an alternative eyeline for the audience. That detail reveals to me a level of craftsmanship that requires years of continuous practice to reach, and this is what is missing in so many modern musicals, in my opinion, due to the lack of funding in the arts. Less and less artists will be able to reach a certain level of mastery in their craft, especially if they have to keep up with 7 different side hustles just to pay their rent and feed themselves. This entire reaction is just gonna be me, like, bobbing my head along to the movie and not saying anything. But it's just so good. Like, the moment I started talking about something, there's another thing. Iconic. In terms of cinematography and editing, the sequence starts with a pretty traditional setup. The dancers are placed on a stage, with them sometimes looking directly into the camera. It is clear that this is a dance not just for expression's sake, but something that is deliberately performed for an audience like Charity, in order to show who is who and how the power dynamics in the specific club operate. The camera follows the performance mostly in a pretty wide angle, with Fosse staging the dancers both in the foreground and background, fully utilizing the whole space that they are dancing in. When everyone lets loose for a moment at the end, the camera establishes mid-shots as the dancers continue in darker lighting setup, and the edit distorts the scene momentarily with different effects. It is no surprise that such a sequence left a huge mark on pop culture, with Beyonce referencing it even decades later. Amazing. That just makes me so happy that people have made something like that. Another great sequence to talk about in reference to staging is Big Spender. This is how you make a musical.
I would guess the Big Spender number was probably the most difficult number to translate to screen time. It played well on stage, I think, because I lined the girls up along the rail, staged a lot of movement and business for them, and then allowed the audience to decide for themselves where they wanted to look, at which particular girl, at which particular moment. Now, the camera had to choose for them.
Fosse is following a really interesting train of thought here, but let me just add one more concept. In virtually any filmmaking class or script writing book, you will be told, show, don't tell. Wikipedia defines this as a narrative technique used in various kinds of texts to allow the reader to experience the story through actions, words, subtext, thoughts, senses, and feelings rather than through the author's exposition, summarization, and description. But this applies to film as well, and I think that this is something that Fosse has really been able to utilize in these group choreography sequences. Big Spender is the sequence which shows us the daily reality of dancehall hostesses. The music is sultry, the women's facial expressions vacant, and their exclamations to the men who visit the joint rehearsed to the point of optimum efficiency. This is a place of business, and these women are professionals. They all have their own character and method of approaching their clients, but all of them are stuck behind the same banister. Did you see that? Did you see that? Editor, playback, please. She needs a bonus. The snapping, the stomping, and the psst in the choreography and musical arrangement, in contrast to the staging of shadowy, anonymous men handling money in the foreground, shows the audience exactly what kind of environment we are in. The costumes, the performances, the staging. Incredible. There is no shot, no beat, no composition that doesn't serve a purpose in the sequence. And this is where my beef with many modern musicals comes into play. I mentioned La La Land when I was watching this movie, and I really didn't want to talk about La La Land because I don't want to get into beef with La La Land fans, but here's the thing.
I have a microphone and you don't. So you will listen to it!
Cool. I like those actors a lot, and I enjoyed Whiplash. I hear more that the movie is supposed to get inspiration from old school musicals. Even cooler. I love those. Let me check it out. I'm open. I'm ready for something new. I sit down, and as I gaze upon the opening song, Another Day in the Sun, I realize, was it mainly straight people who were hyping this movie up to me? Was that what was happening? Okay, but jokes aside, before you get mad, just hear me out, okay? I don't hate the movie. I I have things to say. Can these dancers dance? Clearly they can. Is the camera work impressive? Sure, there's a lot of stuff that goes into getting shots like this on location. But is this staging and choreography giving Tuesday 3 p.m. jazz class warm-ups? Yes, it is. It really is.
That's my opinion!
This one sequence alone has so much empty space and lack of choreography. It feels like any small bit of choreography that happens is designed solely because the camera needs to hit a specific frame within the traffic jam. It leaves the overall performance just kind of boring and forgettable for me because they are screaming, "This is a musical because we are singing and dancing," and not, "There's dancing and singing, so this is a musical." Just because you can make your expensive camera move doesn't make whatever this is great choreography or staging. And listen, I'm not saying that La La Land is a bad movie. Arguably, I don't really remember enough about it to make claims like that. I just remember feeling like it lacked a certain kind of something for my taste. Okay? Don't kill me. Chazelle is obviously a talented guy, but if most of the marketing is hyping up your movie as the eye-popping riff on the old-fashioned musical, then deliver. Give us something. I'm also not passing this as judgment towards any choreographers or filmmakers' skill. From what I have read about this production, it just seems like there were other things prioritized in terms of labor and budget. This next performance is so good.
There's gotta be something better than this.
I feel like I have bantered pretty pointlessly already for a long time, so before I wrap it up, I just want to take a quick look at this fantastic performance by Shirley MacLaine, Cheetah Rivera, and Paula Kelly. There's Gotta Be Something Better Than This is a fantastic sequence to look at in order to see how Fosse's skill in choreographing for screen has developed. But in order for us to have a point of comparison, let's quickly check out a few clips from My Sister Eileen, a 1955 movie which Fosse not only starred in, but it was his first film to choreograph. At first glance, quite a few of the dances from this movie stay pretty true to the cultural zeitgeist of the 50s Hollywood musicals. This duet with Bob Fosse and Tommy Rowell is directly giving Gene Kelly in Singing in the Rain. The simple and innocent duet with Janet Leigh is just that. It doesn't really challenge the eye of the camera in any way. Give Me a Band and My Baby, however, is giving us a glimpse into Fosse's personality as a choreographer. We see a little more of what I covered when talking about Rich Man's Frog. The performance invite focus through controlled but distinct movements and give variety to one huge space through quick formation changes. The exaggerated hunched over posture and quick footwork add a little quirk to this jazz and tap inspired choreography that in old school studio musicals has the potential to come out looking a little too technical and controlled. In its setup, There's Gotta Be Something Better Than This isn't really all that different than Give Me a Band and My Baby. Both are mostly filmed on a pretty simple set and don't use complicated lighting setups. But where Give Me a Band and My Baby is filmed mainly on a wide shot with the dancers filling up the space with choreography, There's Gotta Be Something Better Than This allows the camera to do more.
The wonderful thing about a camera is that you can come in on a hand, you can come into a face or some movement that you don't get in that proscenium.
Here we see the camera realigning and following the performer's movements, changing angles and moving closer or farther away in ways that help the environment highlight and add weight to how the dancers are moving. And boy, do these women know how to perform. These are athletes. These women. My lungs would just collapse. And shooting this probably all day? Nah, marathon. The power and control that MacLaine, Rivera, and Kelly have when dancing is such a pleasure to watch. Their footwork is sharp and jumps high, and even though this might not seem like an utterly complicated choreography, I promise you that you would be poofed if you had to do the same thing while wearing heels. I also love how their singing is intercut with the performers moving through a frozen but busy dance hall to give depth to their daydreaming. Okay, this might seem like an abrupt ending, but I'm gonna finish now because I could be here all day talking about these dances, but I don't think many people would be interested anyway, so I'm just gonna finish for today. If you're still watching, thank you for indulging in my hyperfixations, and I hope that this video inspires you to have a good boogie of your own today.
Love babies.
Hey you! Thanks for watching this whole video. If you like what I do, why not hit the subscribe button over here? Or just let me know in the comments what movie I should watch next. YouTube thinks you might like this video next, but I also worked on this one, so check both of them out. Maybe? I don't know. I hope you have fun watching your next movie. Bye! I wrote this so long ago, I don't actually remember what I've said in this.